Back when I was in college, I used to work at a trampoline park, kind of like what a Sky Zone is. So on days that I was working, I would just be jumping on trampolines all day long because we were allowed or encouraged to play with the kids that would come in, and they had a dunking section with a couple of basketball hoops there, so I'd be doing that for hours on end. And during that summer and even beyond, my jumping ability had significantly improved, whether I was doing broad jumps or vertical jumps, jumping over hurdles, dunking a basketball, jumping off one leg or two legs. They all had gotten better during that summer and past the summer. And at the time, I remember thinking that it was because I was jumping on trampolines all the time, that's why my jumping was better. So I decided to look into the research and see if there's been any studies specifically looking at jumping on trampolines and the effects after. And I was able to find some research looking at trampoline jumping and its effects on performance. There is a little bit of a problem with the research though, is that they all didn't use the same type of trampolines. Some used big trampolines, some used mini trampolines, gymnastics type trampolines. All of the methods were a little bit different. So some of the studies had like what they called high impact jumping. Some of it had low impact jumping. So you just got to take this research with a grain of salt. So with all that being said, here is what I found. Jumping on a trampoline seems to acutely increase leg stiffness. Leg stiffness is defined as peak force divided by the displacement of center of mass during the jump. So what this means is that you reach peak force quicker and don't actually dip as low during your jump after you do some jumping on a trampoline. There's also evidence to suggest that frequent and consistent jumping on trampoline can significantly improve isometric trunk strength, which makes sense. If you have a weak trunk, when you jump on a trampoline, you're kind of just going to collapse. We also have evidence coming from studies talking about elastic power or reactive strength that may have a small improvement after consistent and frequent jumping on trampolines. The coolest results that I've seen from any of the studies is this. Jumping on a trampoline may improve dynamic balance. And what this means is your ability to be precise or accurate with your jumping. So if you want to jump vertically, having high dynamic stability means that you can jump vertically with limited horizontal movement of your center of mass. And this makes a lot of sense because if you make a mistake on a trampoline, you're going to go flying in a direction that you didn't want to go. Now, after looking at all of this research, what is my opinion on jumping on trampolines for athletes? I think jumping on trampolines can be very useful for athletes. But what we have to remember is that there are many variables that contribute to how high someone is jumping. And while there is some evidence out there that may suggest that jumping on trampoline may improve some of these variables that contribute to jump height, like elastic power, like dynamic stability, that doesn't necessarily mean that the outcome, like jumping higher or the amount of power production in jumping, is going to improve. But there are two valuable things that I think jumping on trampolines allow for. One, I think the use of a trampoline allows for a really easy way for an athlete to get a ton of jumping volume in. Using a trampoline, if you have access to, is going to allow for you to get a lot of volume that's just not as taxing as if you were jumping on a hard surface. And secondly, you're obviously going to be jumping a lot higher on a trampoline, therefore you're going to have this kind of psychological effect in which you're going to feel more comfortable the higher you are, and therefore it might just transfer to you jumping higher on the surface because you're going to have this comfortability with being up in the air higher. And remember that a lot of these research studies aren't easily replicable in real life, and there were some studies out there that showed no significant improvements from jumping on trampolines. So with that being said, I think if you have access to jumping on a trampoline, it's not going to hurt if you go do that. I wouldn't use it as a replacement to your normal training, but I think it could be very beneficial as a supplementary exercise. That's all I got for this one. Please hit that like button, subscribe if you're new, and I'll see you next time. Thanks.